Hey Susan, can you come over here for a minute? Don't be so lazy, come over. All right, I come over to you. Meet Lazy Susan. And the best part about it, Lazy Susan was built out of free lumber that I found during a hike in the forest. Do you want one too? Oh, follow me and lass uns anfangen.
There's dirt on my hands, strong like a tree. There's roots where I stand.
Those are some beautiful pieces of lumber that I found. While I found it and took it home, I have no clue what kind of lumber it is. Do you have any idea? Let me know in the comments below. I only had a small amount, so I came up with the circular design for the pieces. And that brought a whole idea of building a Lazy Susan out of it. I've been wanting to change up my table decor centerpiece for a while now, and this would be just a perfect piece for it. Buy one of those round silicone molds that are perfect for round resin pours, but they are not cheap. Or you could also build a circular shape out of flexible materials. But I don't have any of those laying around in my workshop. The cheapest way for me is to just build a square box out of all pieces of lumber that I have laying around in my workshop and then cut a circle later with either a CNC machine, a bandsaw, a jigsaw, or a router. When working with resin, please wear a respirator or work in a well-ventilated area. Also make sure you follow mixing directions. Mixing the resin sufficiently is important for the resin to cure properly. I added some green mica powder for the color. I might have used a little bit too much mica powder here, but then again, is there ever too much mica powder? I pour the resin into the form. Check for the maximum thickness you can pour the resin. Don't be tempted to pour it too deep. It will get too hot too quick while curing, damaging the resin, making it look somewhat cloudy. And you definitely don't want that. I poured mine to the maximum thickness and then came back a few hours later to add additional layers. I only added a mica powder to the first half an inch or so. Then I added clear resin on top of it. I let the resin cure overnight, and then the next day I came back and took the pour out of the mold. This one did not want to come out just yet, and I had to give it a little bit more than just elbow grease. Sometimes I just think I'm stronger than I actually am, and I just won't give up trying, instead of just using a simple tool. But then I gave in finally. I used a hammer and a chisel to separate it quickly from the outside pieces. The weight of this thing is incredibly high. I don't think I've ever had a pour much heavier than this one, and I'm comparing here with larger pieces like table pours I've done before. This is as heavy as a few cinder blocks. To take off all the lumber that's sticking out of the top and end up at a smooth surface, I was going to use my router sled. But then I noticed that it's a bit too high, and part of it needed to be cut off. So I thought I will just take my Japanese pull saw to cut it off. This felt like I was trying to cut a piece of stone. This thing is so hard. But I was determined to get that off. Until I gave up and just took a hammer and chisel and helped it out a bit more. Once I had enough of the height of the lumber removed, I took my router sled and went to work. I went little by little. Since the lumber was so hard, I didn't want to break the bit. I do not have a replacement bit handy, so breaking it would put the whole project on hold. I don't even know what I would do without my router sled. I've been using it so much lately. It opened up the door to much bigger and better projects. I'm really happy I built it. It feels really good to add an actually affordable and useful tool to my workshop. Check out the video of the build if you haven't done so. It's linked in the description below. One of my least favorite things to do is definitely shaving down resin surfaces. Make sure when you do wear a good respirator. As you can see, it got real dusty in my workshop, and cleanup is the worst. Here you can see a close-up of the piece after I flattened the surface. Now it's time to cut out a circular shape. The easiest way is to just have the CNC cut it for you. But again, if you don't have one, you can use a handheld router or a jigsaw. Many ways to get the same result, just be a little bit creative. The only router bit that I had handy wasn't long enough to cut all the way through. In order to cut out the rest of the shape, I used my bandsaw to cut the larger chunks off first. Then I used my handheld router to go around in a circular shape that the CNC had left to cut the rest of the circle flush, so I end up with a clean round shape. You can see the kind of router bit that I'm using. It's called a flush trim bit and has a ball bearing attached to the top of the bit. This bearing will guide the router bit along the round edge, so you can get a clean cut. Make sure you go little by little and don't take off too much too fast. I ended up with the perfect circular shape, and unfortunately, I left a mark to remember on my workshop benchtop. I set the router bit a bit too deep and did not pay attention. Well, that's what happens. Now I will always be reminded of my mistake. We already know how to make some pour resin, so I skipped this step. All I did was to add a coat to the top to get a shiny look for now. I did not care about any dimples or unevenness since I will make the resin matte, and this will cover any mishaps. I started with 120 grit sandpaper and sanded off the drips from the bottom side to end up with a nice flat bottom. Then I worked my way up to 320 grit for the bottom. The sides and the top were covered in glossy resin. I took a 400 grit sandpaper to matten the surface with it. This will take the sheen away and remove any of the unevenness. And like always, let's have fun with it.
Left all my worries and cares. I've got no burdens around you. I don't care who knows I love you. 'Cause I've been so lost without you.
Make sure you stop in between and remove any of the sanding dust that might clog the sanding pad. My Lazy Susan needs a bottom piece, so I took a piece of plywood and cut a second circle, just a bit smaller than the first one. I will attach the hardware that makes the Susan spin in between those two circles. I'm taking a 3/4 inch plywood because that's what I had on hand. Now looking back, I should have taken something much thinner, because you can somewhat see the piece of lumber underneath it, and I don't like that. So I might just change the circle to a thinner one in the future. As I was cutting the circle on my CNC machine, I had a closer look at the other piece, and I noticed a flaw in it. I don't know what happened here, but it looks like air got trapped into it and left a mark, and I don't like it. So I want to try and fix it. This will add another day to my build, but it will be worth it in the end. I took my handheld router to remove the area that's flat, to pour more resin into the hole. Make sure you pour a little bit extra because usually resin settles while curing and you don't want to extend the project longer than you have to by having to pour a second layer. The good thing about resin is that you cannot tell that you added more after the fact, and it will blend in perfectly. Make sure you get out all the bubbles by using a torch or a heat gun. Once dried, I sanded the top smooth. And then it was back to attaching the bottom circle. The hardware for the Lazy Susan I ordered from Amazon. If you'd like to check it out, I ordered a link in the description below. I don't know where I got this lousy dowel drill bit from, but it's in the trash now. I felt like I was starting a fire instead of drilling through the piece. Before adding the screws, I stained the plywood in a nicer color. I probably would have went with a darker color if I had that handy. Maybe a dark walnut stain would have looked really nice. But for now, this will do. Like previously mentioned, I want to change out this piece in the future anyways to a thinner piece. I let the stain dry overnight. For the top piece, I opted for a wax finish. I applied the furniture wax in a circular motion and then came back 10 minutes later and buffed it. Then it was time to attach the hardware. Always make sure you pre-drill all of the holes. I applied the same furniture wax that I applied on the bottom on the top surface as well. I let it dry for 10 minutes, came back and buffed it, and wir fertig! I absolutely love the top part of the Lazy Susan. The bottom, not so much, but that can easily be swapped out. What do you think? Do you like the project? Please leave me a comment. If you haven't done so, like and subscribe to my channel. Please also click the bell button to get notified of new videos. If you can, please join my Patreon. This helps me create more YouTube videos. Thank you so much for all of your support. See you next Friday. Tschüss und auf Wiedersehen.